Hey y'all, Shelly here with another tip for hospice nurses. So I had a request to do a video on IDT documentation. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, I think if we have a lot going on with the patient over the 14 days, those notes are pretty much write themselves because we had a lot going on. I think it's the notes, the times where we got everything under control and they're going along smoothly. And what do we say on those notes? So that's really what I'm going to focus on today. So the first thing I do is, I always talk about the patient header, or that first section that I do of every note. So that's the part where patient is, Mrs. Minnie Mouse is a 79-year-old African-American female with a terminal hospice diagnosis of end-stage chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and the secondary complications of, list those out, comorbid conditions that further contribute to decline include, and I list those out. So I always keep this in a notes section on my tablet. So I will copy and paste this into my IDT note. And that way, I think it's really good, especially if for some reason I won't be available for IDT. Whoever's doing it for me has all of that patient information right there. And it gives a good, clear picture of what's going on with that patient. And then I will talk about one thing that relates back to their hospice diagnosis. So in this case, I might say, over the past 14 days, patient has remained dependent on supplemental oxygen at 4 liters per nasal cannula. Patient has also required hospice intervention of duonabs 4 to 6 times in a 24-hour period. Patient reports that this is effectively managing their symptoms. Then the next 14 days, if nothing has happened, I'm going to pick a different system, but relate it back to their hospice diagnosis. So a lot of times, I use my book for this a lot of times. So I'll flip to a system section, like let's say mobility. And I will say, I'll do my header, and then I will say, due to progression of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease resulting in decline in overall condition and debility, minimal tolerance for activity related to weakness and disabling dyspnea with minimal activity. Patient requires rolling walker and standby assistance to ambulate short distance. Patient unable to stand without assistance and only able to take 3 to 4 shuffling steps before having to stop and rest. Lack of tolerance for activity has resulted in muscle atrophy and increasingly worsening state of weakness. So I will do this, and then that will be my note for that week. And then the next week, I'll pick a different system, maybe skin or something else that's going on, just another system, and I will talk about that, how it relates back to their hospice diagnosis. And then, eventually you rotate back around to that first one. And that's how I pretty much do my IDT notes. Now, I know that some companies require that you do follow a certain format. So of course you have to follow that format in those instances. But I hope this tip was helpful. If you have any tips that would be helpful for hospice nurses, please let me know. I'd love to share them here. And remember, together we can change our world.